my future mother, Nancy, walks up and was like, hey guys, I forgot my Vaseline at home. Can I borrow some of yours? And I almost think the reason that they would do it is to signal, do not come near us, right? Like, stay away. I got offered the right to buy all the Planet Fitness territories for California, and I got offered. Yeah, I got offered that because I knew someone. Again, not what you know, it's who you know, right? Some of the dumbest people in the world making millions of dollars, right?
I am joined today by Reid Tileston. Reid is the author of Grit It Done, a low-risk guide to entrepreneurial business ownership. Reid is a serial self-funded searcher and investor. He is an adjunct professor at the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University, teaching ETA, Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition. Reid's experience is derived from 15 years of successful on-the-ground entrepreneurial business ownership, acquiring, opening, growing, and selling companies, in addition to his own academic research. Reid has worked with leading brands such as Harley-Davidson, the Milwaukee Bucks, John Deere, Tough Mudder, nice fitness connection there, and Microsoft in my backyard here in Seattle, and has been featured in publications including the Wall Street Journal. In addition to this, Reid is a doctoral student at Case Western doing a dissertation in entrepreneurship through acquisition. Reid, thank you for joining the In-Group podcast.
My absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. Now, I have a question for you, given that you talk about a lot of health and fitness, if you don't mind. What is your favorite type of fitness routine?
Oh, man. Okay, so I have recently fallen in love, and you'll see this if you go to the YouTube channel and look at some of my past interviews with Ben Patrick's ATG, Knees Over Toes program. Are you familiar with the Knees Over Toes guy at all?
I am not.
Highly recommend you check him out. So I know you are a big distance runner. ATG is really focused on improving mobility and resilience in every joint of your body. Ben Patrick, the founder of ATG, was a basketball player growing up, suffered from a ton of knee maladies, and has really developed a program that helps people maintain their vitality long into their life. So I used to play ice hockey and then was a sprinter, and currently still suffer from knee pain. And his ATG program has unlocked a lot of the old bounciness that I used to enjoy. So ATG is really the foundation. And from there, classic bodybuilding, Olympic lifting. I dabbled in CrossFit for a bit, but ATG is my favorite at the moment.
That's fantastic. And it's all about being able to do these fun, awesome things well into our 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. It sounds like he's providing a roadmap for that. So it's fantastic. Speaking of fitness businesses, I think that ice rink rentals and ice rinks are a great business to be in. I was super surprised over the years, particularly when I lived in the Midwest, that these ice rinks, there's serious wait lists to get access to ice time. And people would pay ridiculous amounts of money for it. So who would have thought? I mean, there's so many interesting ways. There's a lot of competition in the health and fitness space and the wellness space, but there's just there's still interesting niche opportunities out there like that I think are primed to be explored by entrepreneurs that can kind of look outside of the mainstream to find some of those ways to make money in health and fitness.
Reid, I definitely want to double click on that in a little bit. I'll try to remember. So there is a rink very close by my house. It's called the Snow King rink, and there's a network of about 3 different rinks around the Seattle area. But that has been on my list to delve into a little bit more. So I remember playing ice hockey. Ice time is very expensive, and it's an expensive sport. And so it kind of selects for being willing to pay a lot of, and the equipment, everything about hockey is expensive. And so that does ring true. I imagine the CapEx is probably pretty high, and maintenance cost just to keep the ice frozen is probably high. I would be interested how much you've looked into the P&Ls of that business and how good of a business it is. But that's something I've thought about going a little deeper on.
Yeah, and there's a great potential real estate play to it as well. So a couple different angles to go in there. And by the way, I don't watch a ton of live sports, but live hockey, my favorite one by a long shot. So it's good times.
Have you gone to any of the Utah Hockey Club? You guys just recently got a new team.
I was so peeved because I'm a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and we had a box on March 10th, and the email went out to get a spot reserved for it. And I only missed it by maybe an hour, maybe 70 minutes, and it was already booked up and filled up, and I got on the list. I wasn't able to go. So I really want to go, and I can go in a box, and I just missed that opportunity literally 13 days ago. So I look forward to getting out there, though.
Well, you'll get it. Yeah, I absolutely love hockey. But anyway, let's get into your early life, Reid. Where did you grow up, and what was your early family life like?
Yeah, I mean, my family life basically starts with how my parents met. It was the late 70s at the starting line of a running race in Northern California, very close to Stanford in Palo Alto.
Yeah.
It was a pretty warm day, mid 80s, and my dad and his first cousin were going to go run a marathon. So it's the late 70s. When it's hot, you're worried about sweating and skin chafing, which is very painful. In the late 70s, what do people use to mitigate skin chafing? What do you think? And there was one thing. Now there's like 20 things you can use, like Body Glide, but back then there was only one thing.
Well, I'd be guessing. I'm gonna show my ignorance here.
Yeah.
Baby powder.
Close.
Vaseline.
Vaseline. You got
Vaseline,
it. Vaseline.
okay. There you
So
go.
my dad, Fred, and his first cousin, Terry, they were literally and they're both, my dad's 6'2", my cousin's 6'5", short shorts, tank tops, all kinds of body hair. They were lubing themselves up with Vaseline on their inner armpits, nipples, and inner thighs to avoid chafing, right?
Yeah.
Then while this is going on, my future mother, Nancy, walks up and was like, "Hey guys, I forgot my Vaseline at home. Can I borrow some of yours?" And of course, Daddy was like,
Of course.
"Sure, like here you go. What do you do?" And that's how my parents met. I can go into more details of that. So from a health and from a fitness standpoint, I mean, from a running standpoint in particular, my passion for that industry was set up even before I was born. My parents eventually got married. My dad and my mom are both excellent runners, and I've literally was doing like 40 or 50-mile weeks in my stroller since the age of 4 onwards.
Yeah. So distance running, that really is your sport of choice, and you're genetically predisposed to excel at this. Did you participate in cross country, track and field, long distance running, kind of through junior high and then to high school?
Yeah, I definitely ran a lot growing up. But the challenge I would have, though, which started to come up in high school, is to your point about the regenerative fitness stuff you're doing now and being able to do these crazy things well into later in our lives.
Yes.
Is that biomechanically I'm just not set up as a distance runner. So after like humping out 40 miles a week, I get stress fractures in my right tibia. And I went to see a really good sports medicine doctor about it. And they said, listen, you're just biomechanically not made to be a distance runner. It's as simple as that. You're going to structurally get these stress fractures. We can do a bunch of really expensive procedures, none of which are probably going to solve the problem. But what my parents did endow me with, which I think is a critical part of the endurance athletics, is just the idea of, endurance athletics are hard. They entail suffering, right?
Yeah.
It's just a mentality of do hard things, put one foot in front of the other, do not quit. And I applied that to running, and I've done marathons and ultra marathons. I've applied that to Ironman. I've done a lot of triathlons, cold water swimming. I'm very much into mountaineering these days because I live in Utah currently. It's just that same mentality, right? Put one foot in front of the other, take the pain, and then good things will come. Applies in fitness, applies for, I think, life in general. And I thank my parents for that. And I thank the jug of Vaseline that they met over, way 40 plus years ago now.
That's a great story. In your book, you talk about the climb in Switzerland. What is that called again? And when did you first hear about that?
The Nissan Treppenlauf. I heard about that
man.
from someone that I was dating at the time. Her mom actually heard about it first, and I was running a business at this point. I was very, very busy, and they didn't tell me about it for a number of years because they knew that the minute that they told me about it, it was going to happen. And they were right. The minute that she did tell me about it, I'm like, whoa, I absolutely unequivocally have to do it. But in 1915, the Swiss built a funicular up the side of an 8,000-foot peak in the Swiss Alps right across from Jungfrau. And this funicular, they created a maintenance staircase for it, right? Because you need to be able to, get there and maintain the tracks and do all that kind of work. And this maintenance staircase spans 11,674 stairs, which is for perspective, that's 7 times the number of stairs that exist in the Empire State Building.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. And then 85 years later, they have this genius idea that we are going to do a race up this staircase, and thus the annual Nissan Treppenlauf was born in the year 2000, and it's been going on since that point. Some years, though, they actually get so much ice and snow, because they do it in June, there's still ice and snow on the staircase.
Wow.
They actually have to cancel it some years, maybe I'd estimate 1 in like 8 or 9 times they've canceled it. Yeah, so I think it's just the coolest endurance event in the world. And for your listeners that have done stair climbing, they know. For those that haven't done stair climbing, it is one of the most punishing, high-intense workouts that exist out there because the pain just exponentially amplifies the higher that you get. And if you do it indoors, you get the issue of you just get this really good, lung feeling that exists. So it's to me, it's the absolute best kind of pain. And a Nielsen Trumpenlauf is an event that I recommend that everybody do at some point in their life. It's kind of hard to get into. There's a lottery, and sometimes they make you qualify for it. Depends on what the year is. They kind of mix it up year to year, but it's a great event.
Well, that's a great intro to who Reid is and what type of challenges you like to go after. Your book was an absolute masterpiece, an excellent resource. I've read it twice. Let's get into some of the specifics there so the audience can hear some of your fundamental concepts. So in the beginning, you talk through the 4 professional pathways: employee, equity employee, business owner, and then entrepreneurial business owner. Would you mind going into what these are? And then I would like you to explain the roles that you've played in each of those throughout your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's be clear, right? Employees are great. They're the backbone of the economy, and it's a great path to go, right? It's lower risk, but it provides, on the outside, more levels of stability, and it's a great option. And I think the biggest mistake that people make is going down a path that is not inherently right for them. So employee is a great path. Being a business owner, I think, is fantastic. Even the business owner that is literally just working their job as a business owner day in and day out, you own the upside of what you do. And I think there's 2 levels of autonomy. There's a level of autonomy where you can set your own schedule and you work for yourself. But there's a better level of autonomy where, as opposed to working for the business works for you. And that's where being an entrepreneurial business owner comes in, where you have the autonomy and the freedom where you can work on the business and not in the business. Then when you talk about an equity employee, equity employees, which is essentially a way of saying a CEO, they are able to work on the business, not in the business, which is great. But the downside is that they are still employees. They work for a board, and the board could, wake up one day, have a meeting and say, hey, your time is done. You're out of here. So you don't completely own your upside. Now, the key is that, or you don't completely control your destiny, rather. Mm-hmm. The key is that there's not a right and there's not a wrong. I've had the luck of I've been all of those at various points in my life, but I've defaulted most to being an entrepreneurial business owner. And, to me, and not to sound too corny with this term, but I mean, to me, it really is like the 21st century of the American dream, to either buy an existing business. And there's a lot out there, right? With a silver tsunami, or, buy into a low cost, lower risk franchise and really be able to both control your destiny and have the autonomy that comes with entrepreneurial business ownership.
What are the key elements that you've observed small business owners have that is limiting them from becoming an entrepreneurial business owner?
It's simply loneliness, quite frankly. Being a business owner is awesome, but oftentimes you are alone at the top. The crown at the top is very heavy, so it's very easy for business owners to kind of keep to themselves, keep in their businesses, keep their customers close, keep their team members close, run their business effectively. But when you can get people around you that can push you and you can learn from, that is where business owners can go from being a business owner to an entrepreneurial business owner. And that's why I'm not going to tell you that there's like a good peer group or a bad peer group, but what I would tell any business owner is join a peer group. I mean, don't go through this process alone. There's only certain things that other business owners can really relate to you with. And the things you can learn just by being around them are going to be invaluable for your business. And there's a ton out there. You have, EO, you have C12 if you want to, be a faith-based Christian peer group. There's a lot out there.
YPO.
Whole 9 yards. Yeah, I mean, there's tons out there. The point is, if you're not a member of at least one of those, I think that you're leaving a ton on the table, both in terms of your business performance and also just in terms of the happiness in your life, because my belief is that when you meet and interact with other business owners, you're able to form strong connections and resonant relationships. So the biggest thing to me is, I will call it loneliness or isolation, is what inhibits businesses from reaching their true potential.
What specifically can change in the business itself when a business owner, CEO, joins one of these groups that then allows them to work on their business instead of in their business? Is it the sharing of best practices? Is it the development of systems? Is it learning from people in other industries that kind of helps you hire better, retain? Like, what are the things that change in the business that allows the business owner, after joining that peer group, to then be able to step away and really build an asset?
Yes, the answer to that is yes to all that stuff. But the instrumental mechanism, how it happens is that in those groups, it's going to drive a certain level of vulnerability. And the business owner there's going to be things in the business that they just don't want to confront, either consciously or oftentimes subconsciously. They're telling themselves a story about how, for example, the manager named Chris, who's been there for 8 years, and they're telling themselves stories about why he really is like key to the business and he's the right fit for the business. When that really comes to light and you get 8 other people to kind of see what's going on, it might be like, well, you know what? Maybe he's a key to your business now, but he's also the reason your business hasn't really grown in the last, 10 years or however long he's been there. Because while Chris is really good at these things, Chris is limiting the business in these things. So while we're not saying that Chris should be let go, we are saying that maybe you want to bring on someone to augment some of Chris's skill set, and that could potentially open things up, right? So that would be one concrete example. Is just, when business owners are in their own heads, right, and thinking about things, they just don't always see what the other perspectives are. And let's be clear, you don't have to grow a business, right? You don't have to be an entrepreneurial business owner. You can be very happy just being in the field, working with a team, keeping it small, right? These are all options that you have. But I do think that 1, if you want to be happier, and 2, if you actually do want to grow the business, that being in a peer group is the best way to do it. Best and most cost-effective way to do it.
This really comes home back even to fitness, where I've observed, I'm sure you've observed as well, where you get your best results when you have training partners.
100%. I mean,
you just do.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like my very first triathlon, as an example, I'm a runner by background, right? So it's a sprint triathlon. I think I got 4th place. Don't quote me on this, but I think I was 4th place in running. I think I was like 19th in cycling, and this was like 1,300 people in the triathlon, right? And then swimming, I was like in literally the bottom 2% of swimming, right? So dominated running, dominated cycling, swimming, not so good. Yes. So fast forward to the first Ironman that I did. I trained in San Francisco in the Bay with a group called the South End Rowing Club, which is a bunch of, whack jobs, cold water swimmers, people that have been swimming most instances they're like 4 years old. They're the ones doing the English Channel. They're the ones, swimming around Catalina Island, right? It's like all those people. I swam with them for a year and a half, and fast forward to the Ironman, swimming was my best event, right? It totally flipped over those years. And the only reason it did is because I surrounded myself with these just world-class, amazing swimmers, of which I literally was one of the worst. I could barely keep up, right? I almost drowned and got hypothermia numerous times, but it made me really, really good in the process. So yeah, if you want to get better, you got to surround yourself with people that are better. And if you want to get worse, then surround yourself by people that are worse than you. And there you go. You'll become like who you surround yourself by.
Thank you, Reid. Yeah. So that's a big shout out to everybody who's listening. Take this seriously and really bring it home to fitness. That was the aha moment for me. It's, oh yeah. I've experienced that firsthand, and your story is perfect. All right. So I want to get back to your story. In 2007, you left your finance job to open up your first Anytime Fitness. Before getting to Anytime Fitness, what was your finance job? And it was in the Bay Area, correct?
Yeah, correct. It was at this awesome fund called Industry Ventures. So I was doing deal sourcing in secondary venture capital and private equity. And just fun aside, right? There was 3 partners and me. Very entrepreneurial environment. It was super fun. Yeah. A fund had like 20 million bucks back then. I think, and they were raising a fund to get it to 30 million. Now, Industry Ventures, the biggest secondary player in the space, like don't quote me on it, but over $1 billion under management. Yeah. And the funny part is that after I left, the guy they brought on after me, Joseph Zwillinger, went off to he was a founder of Allbirds, a shoe company. So there's been a lot of cool things that have happened from the original people that are there. So I'm not saying that I've done nearly as well as they have, but again, surrounding myself with good people, I get a lot of inspiration from that group. But yeah, it was great. I was deal sourcing and building financial models, and I was pretty good at it, right? I wasn't the best, but I was effective. Yeah. And in doing that, because you source a deal, you can make a little bit of money. I'd managed to save up $100,000. Wanted to be entrepreneurial, not an engineer. Wasn't going to go found the next Facebook. But when I was in high school, I learned this idea of entrepreneurship through acquisition from my older brother. He's very entrepreneurial, classic startup mind. He, when he got his driver's license, we lived about 20 minutes from the airport. He would start driving my parents to the airport and get paid for it through his allowance. Then he would start to drive our parents' friends to the airport and get paid for that. Then he would start driving his friends' parents. He built up this this small taxi service basically before the days of Uber, just driving people to the airport. And people would pay more money for him than they would for a taxi, right? They just enjoyed it.
Wow.
So he had
Yeah.
this small little business. He graduated, went to college. Then at that same time, I got my driver's license and I took over the business. I started, doing the same people he was doing. Then I expanded it to my friends and my friends' parents and people at church and other people around the community. And before I knew it, I was probably doing 4 or 5 times the revenue that he was doing. And that's where I kind of picked up this idea of like, listen, I don't think I can tell you, I'm not like I'm not a very clever, smart person, right? I don't need to like come up with like the next big thing. I realized at that point, it's just a heck of a lot easier to take something that's already working and just apply my energy and apply my passion to it, right? And then it can or you take something that's good, that's already, the base is already there, and just apply my energy to it and good things happen. So I took that same mentality when I was looking at opportunities at Industry Ventures. It's like, hey, let's like find a concept that works, that's doing really well, and where I don't have to tinker with things, I can just follow the recipe and apply my energy, work hard, motivate some people around me, and good things will come. And that was the hypothesis and the premise of getting involved in Anytime Fitness.
And so why did you pick the fitness industry?
Well, hey, you know how my parents met, right?
Yeah.
And that was a secondary reason for it. Believe it or not, I mean, Anytime Fitness, at that point, the way that opportunity was found is I had two partners at this point. They were deal sourcing. They worked in private equity 2 blocks from where I was. And I should tell you who those partners were, is my older brother and another individual at that firm, right?
There he is again.
Yeah, they were deal sourcing for franchisors to buy. You ever heard of Togo's, by the way? The sandwich shop? Yeah,
Yeah.
so the private equity firm ended up buying Togo's as an FYI, which was a
The
very
Zor, the franchisor.
yeah, they bought the
Yeah,
franchisor of Togo's, and that very successful outcome for them. But the point is, at this point, 2007, they were deal sourcing. No, 2006 at this point, they were deal sourcing for franchisors to buy, and they started looking at fitness, and they looked at Anytime and Snap, and they're like, wow, these are really good concepts. Got a couple hundred clubs for Anytime. Snap had like 50 at that point. They're in the Midwest. There was, I think, maybe 3 in California at that time. Great concept. They were fast growing. So we were out at a happy hour, and I was like, yeah, I don't quite know what I'm like, Industry Ventures is great. I don't know that I'm tired of being a spreadsheet jockey though. And obviously my brother knew that I loved fitness, right? We grew up in the same household. He's like, we're looking at Anytime Fitness right now. We don't think we're going to do a deal with them, but man, these franchisees are just crushing it. And that's how that whole process started. And the key takeaway from that, which I cannot stress enough to people, especially people that I teach at Case, at Booth, and at BYU. I'm a professor at BYU now, and I'm like a kid in a candy shop teaching the young undergrads there. They are amazing. So we can talk about that later. But what I always tell people in class is that it is literally not what you know, it is who you know. And that has proven to be the case time and time and time again in my career. And I always encourage the students to say, don't focus on me. Don't focus on the guests that we bring in that are, 1%ers that have been really successful doing these things. But look to your classmates, right? Because it's going to be your classmates, the ones next to you, that are going to really provide you with the opportunities in your life that can be very lucrative. So don't look ahead, look to your side, and never underestimate the value of networking.
That's very wise. I definitely want to come back to your teaching, and I didn't realize BYU and Booth you're also teaching there, so I definitely want to come back to that. But in your book, you talk about going from your first gym to, I think you eventually had 3 gyms. Was it 3 gyms that you?
Yeah,
3. Okay,
had a number of them.
Yeah. You went from, on your first gym, a couple thousand a month to then being a top 10% performer and then being a top 1% performer. What were the levers that you pulled with each subsequent gym to improve its performance within the self-esteem footprint?
Yeah, absolutely. And the key to it is that just getting operational experience, I think is just so powerful, because just by doing, I learn and I get better.
Yeah.
And there's no substitute for getting in there and just having those experiences. So I just got better at managing people. I got better at sales. I got better at marketing. I just got better in everything. But the key takeaway that I think is critical for your listeners, if they're going to go into the world of franchising, is the reason that first club didn't do very well is that I mentioned that we had 3 partners. I tend to be somebody, when I don't know, I will listen to people that do, right? And I'll follow directions. I'm a direction follower at my core. So I'm an Eagle Scout. I think that's where a big part of that comes from, right? Just check the box, do what you got to do, go from there. And good things will come. But in our partnership group, there was one individual that the franchisor told us in no uncertain terms, very black and white, actually. They said, listen, if you want a world of pain, open a fitness club in a bigger market. If you want to do well, open a fitness club in a small market, right? Small markets on a binary level is what our sweet spot is. Now, I'm not from a small town. Neither of my partners is from small towns. We just don't get small towns, right? So we were all concerned about it, but one of the partners could never get comfortable with a small town. Just couldn't do it, right? We could see,
even though that was the playbook. It was like, this is the playbook.
Yeah, and we could look at other clubs because franchisors are. You can see what clubs exist. You can talk to the owners. There was very compelling data points. We could see this club is in this town doing this, but we just couldn't get comfortable. So decided for the first one, we're going to open in a more competitive market because we feel more comfortable there. So we did that, and as predicted, it was a mediocre, painful outcome. The upside is that I learned how to run a business, right? And coming from the finance background, the spreadsheet jockey, I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a lot to learn. Hiring people, firing people, bringing on trainers, sales, marketing, real estate, everything, right? I had a lot to learn. Yeah. In my opinion, though, that was 40% of the problem. 60% of it was it was a bad market. Or 20% was me, 20% was the economy, 60% was it was a bad market. Yeah. So with that experience, then for later clubs, which were all on my own, which was great, always opened them in small towns, and that's where I did very well.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned the Central Valley. I grew up in Fresno, California.
Yeah.
And I was curious, which towns in the Central Valley? Were you more like in the Sacramento area? Did you come down at all toward Fresno?
No, never went south of Stockton. Galt and Winters in particular. So those are Club 2 and number 3 respectively. And Central Valley is tough because In Shape Fitness, right, dominates Central Valley. And In Shape over the years, very good operators. In Shape over the years has always, I thought, done very intelligent things to keep competitors at bay and really know their market and own the necessary market. So In Shape does smart things like open up boutique clubs that are open 24/7, right? So In Shape and like a Modesto, for example, will have their big box club. Very effectively priced and open 24 hours often. But then in certain markets, they would go and they'd actually open an In Shape club that was like an Anytime Fitness or a Snap Fitness, but under the In Shape umbrella. And I almost think the reason that they would do it is to signal, do not come near us, right? Like stay away. So In Shape is, fitness is a very competitive space. A lot of good operators out there. I think that In Shape is a great example because they know their market, which is the California Central Valley, insanely well. And I think that smart regional niche operators, there's always a place for smart regional niche operators like that.
I observed that in my hometown in Fresno. So in Fresno, there was a single operator. His name was George Brown.
Yeah, GB3, baby.
You know GB3, let's go.
Yeah, because GB3 is great because he's famous. He thumped 24-hour fitness. 24-hour fitness came and GB3 beat him.
So this is exactly my point. Like, he knows Fresno. And I've seen Bally's come in, 24-hour fitness come in, and he just dunked them. And I think even when we first moved to Fresno, before he was GB3, it was George Brown Sports Club. He sold to one of the large groups, had a non-compete for 5 years, went away, and then came back, reopened GB3 and put them out of business again, right? So, this is how the small towns go, right? If you really know your market, you can really dominate and make a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So what would you say are some of the pros and cons of being an EBO in fitness? You mentioned competition. It's a big deal. What are some of the pros of being an EBO in this industry?
Yeah, and I just want to hit on one unique. So the pros to it, right? To answer your question clearly, one is that there's so many demographic tailwinds to fitness, right? Country's getting older. People value health. People value fitness. People want to work out. The industry is going to grow on the demand side. It is going to grow because people want this. It's good for the country. It's good for individuals. It reduces healthcare costs. Government's behind it. Employers are behind it. Pretty much everyone is behind fitness, right? So because of that, it's going to have all kinds of organic growth. And the benefit to being in an industry that's growing, which I love working with operators and teaching people and being with people that have been in industries that are shrinking, because if you've been in a shrinking or stagnant industry, then you can really appreciate the benefits of a growing industry because, rising tide lifts all boats, right? So I think that is that's a pro of being in the fitness industry. A second pro to being in the fitness industry is that there's a lot of validation now that people will pay a lot of money for fitness, right? So there's been validation that people will pay almost ridiculous amounts for fitness. And in the grander scheme of things, while not completely recession resistant, a lot of other industries, the fitness industry is certainly what I would call a top quartile performer when it comes to recessions, right? It is reasonably recession resistant. Third upside to it is, which is also a downside, and we'll switch to that in a second, is that you're doing good, right? Anytime that, with the exception of the time that, you break your leg or dislocate your shoulder or tear your meniscus, right? You could get injured working out. It certainly happens. Aside from that, there's no downside to working out, right? Working out is good. It is good for the body. Every minute that you work out, you're saving yourself money on healthcare. You're going to come out happier. You're going to be smiling. You're going to uplift the lives of the people around you. You're doing good. Every operator in the fitness space is doing good for society and doing good for humanity. And let's be clear. There's a lot of careers out there where that is not the case, right? And I'm not going to beat up like Coke or Pepsi, but if you're selling, Coke or Pepsi for a living, right, or working there, then it's like, hey, they have some very healthy products for sure, but a lot of that stuff, it's sugar, it's diabetes. I think that on the grander scheme of things, working in fitness, just by doing that, you're doing good for society, right? So that's a positive to it. A negative to it is that
into the cons, man.
Yeah, and the cons, and just building upon that positive side of it. Because of that, you get a lot of people in the fitness space that are really happy not to make a ton of money in it because they are intrinsically motivated by fitness, right?
Preach.
They have potentially been a success story themselves and they've lost a bunch of weight and they just want to share that with other people. And they do it from an intrinsic standpoint that is not always focused on the profit and loss statement. And because of that, it becomes very competitive and you're competing with people at times that are not looking towards the bottom line. And so in some senses, if you are looking towards the bottom line, you're like, they're just not acting rationally, right? Well, yeah, because they have different utility sets. You get a lot of passionate people in the space that can cause some challenges on the dynamic competitively. Now, the other issue is that it is an insanely competitive industry. There is a lot of very well-funded, sophisticated operators out there. And I give an example of Orange Theory and Planet Fitness. Most of the franchisees are private equity firms, right? Not the franchisor, but the franchisees are private equity firms. And they are very sophisticated, smart operators. And while we talked about how the industry is growing overall, the numbers that I tend to see is that demand's growing and demand and supply are dynamic, but supply is growing very quickly as well. So there's a lot of concepts out there. Concepts change consistently. It's hard to acquire members. It's hard to keep members. And you're dealing with people that are, you got the GB3s out there, right? You got the George Browns, but you also have a lot of very deep-pocketed, very smart people that are looking at it, and a ton of private equity money in the space. So very competitive industry. In addition to that, CapEx is so it's a high CapEx, low marginal cost industry. So what happens is essentially once somebody has made the choice, at least on the more traditional side, to spend the money to buy all that equipment, then they're also tempted to say, well, I can't get members, so I'm just going to lower the price, right? Because the marginal cost of a member is so low. And that microeconomic dynamic has the potential to create pricing wars, right? And pricing wars are very detrimental. Now, on the flip side of that, it's been proven through the all the classes and the boutique gyms and that model that, wow, you can get into this on lower CapEx, right, than has historically been the case. And you can have these great, pay-per-use recurring revenue models, right? The challenge there is that in some of those models, because the CapEx is low, now there's lower barriers to people coming in. So pretty much everything from a competitive standpoint in the fitness space is an absolute quagmire because you have people in it that some mom and pop operators and some smaller ones that just aren't that money motivated. You have high CapEx, low marginal costs in the more traditional models. Then you also have models, though, that have no CapEx, so they have no barriers to entry, and you're competing against very well-funded, experienced operators. So from a competitive standpoint, it is an absolute quagmire, an absolute nightmare, and that can be a challenge for a lot of operators.
What's your preferred business model? Do you prefer HVLP or do you prefer the boutique? Like if you were to do another gym, not saying you're going to, but if you had to pick one today, do you think HVLP is a better option, so the high volume, low price, or the more boutique side?
My Biggest regret in the fitness space is in 2009, I had two Anytime Fitness clubs and
Mhm.
I was doing well, or
Mhm.
the second club I was doing really well. So I was happy as a clam. I got offered the right to buy all the Planet's Fitness territories for California. And I got offered, yeah,
Ah!
I got offered that because I knew someone, again, not what you know, it's who you know, right?
Yeah.
There's an operator in San Jose, still out there, named Joe Gigantino Jr., a great guy, owns a couple clubs out there and a lot of other side businesses too. And he got offered it and he said, no, I don't want to do it. And then I got lunch with him where I went by his club to meet up. He was like
Yeah.
45 minutes late, which really upset me. But, met up with him. We started talking. He's like, I just got offered this. I'm not going to take it. Then he's like, are you interested? And I'm like, yeah, let's have a look. So I looked at it, talked to him, and I decided not to take it as well. And Anytime Fitness has been very, very, very good to
Yeah.
me over the years. It is a great concept.
Yes.
No
I'm a
complaints.
member, by the way. I'm a
Yeah.
member. That's my home gym.
Yeah.
Right
Nice.
now, today. Yeah.
I mean, the convenience, right? Convenience,
Great.
cleanliness, non-intimidation. It's a great concept.
Yep.
So, but if I had 2020 hindsight, I probably would have gone to buy all the Planet Fitness territories and go that route. So, where do I think that the industry is going? I take
Yeah.
the Tony Blair approach. Tony Blair, Prime Minister of UK during the Iraq War, he said this in this context. He's like, I just don't predict things ever in any capacity. The fitness industry is it's very trend based. There's a lot of things. What I would say for anybody who's in the space right now, or someone, sorry, who's thinking about getting in the space right now, I would actually tell you it doesn't matter where you start in the space. You could, find an Anytime, not there's many left, but find an Anytime Fitness territory. You could buy a mom and pop club on resale. Any way to get started, then get in there and just listen to what your customers tell you. Understand the space from an operational standpoint, and then make sure that you have the capital and the ambition to be able to act on what you learn and what you're hearing. Because when you're actually operating and you have your ear on the ground, like, people will generally tell you what they want and you can kind of see where the things are going. And those are the bets that I would make. So as an example, as an Anytime Fitness owner, I mean, it's not rocket science, but my members could always tell me, hey, you should open up like in this market here. Here's why it's great. And they were oftentimes right. They would also tell me, hey, here's what, and I would survey the members. So this stuff, like, here's what the club is missing. Here is what, here's the reasons that we would leave. Here's what we think, you get all that data and the stuff in there. It's like not complex. It's saying, listen, there's a lower cost club in town. And, listen, I think you guys are overpriced for your amenities. If you were to add these things, I would be tempted to stay. If you weren't, that's why you didn't, and that's why I left, right? Or saying that you need to have classes, right? And then ask the question of, well, how much would you pay for something like this? And these are all things that, as the years went by, and then like a different concept would open up and take some of the members, right? It's like the members are kind of telling you these things. The key is having that flexibility to be able to put those changes into place, right? So my guidance would be get into the industry and just listen to what the members are saying, listen to what your customers are saying, and that can oftentimes lead you to lead you to good things. And I can give examples of that outside of the fitness space.
Yeah,
But that would be that would be the guidance.
Yeah, I would love to actually talk about your industrial services experience and grease trap pumping and all of that, and how was that transition from the fitness industry to industrial services?
To me, it was the exact same thing because, humping around a 20-foot hose filled with liquid, which weighs like 45 pounds, that's like the best workout in the world, and you also have the issue that, it's like dirty stuff you're dealing with. So you have like that aspect as well. That's like the smooth transition. The way that business grew so much over the years before I bought it, because it was a good business, I thought it was a great business before I bought it, is very simply going on the theme we talked about with Anytime Fitness and the fitness industry, is that the company would do good work for its customers, and then the customers would basically ask for additional services, right? And it wasn't the company pitching the customers. It was them saying, hey, you guys do a great job with this. We're having a headache with this. Is this something that you could look into and solve? And the answer to that question was 90% of the time, no. We don't want to do that. It doesn't make any sense. But once in a while, they would choose something and say, wow, we have the capabilities to do this, or it's easy enough for us to grow into that. They would do it, and then they would scale it, right? So a key takeaway is that there's no substitute for operational experience to learn how industries work. And there's no substitute for just listening and having relationships with customers. It plays out time and time again across countless industries all the time.
Can you tell me a little bit about your 67% gross margin rule and why that's so important? So like a 3x multiple on COGS?
Yeah, in the case of the industrial services business, it's simply a matter of discipline, right? If you do that, the business maintains high profit margins. If you don't do that and you get slippery on it, then the profit margins go down. I mean, it's just a matter of simple execution. It's very easy operationally to make excuses as to why we should do this as like a loss leader, or we should do this as like long-term customer value and this and that. And that's fine, right? But when you can make every job highly, highly, highly profitable, why would you not do that, right? I'm a pretty black and white binary person. I'm not highly intelligent. I'm not, super intuitive. I'm not complex in how I think about things. I like things that are insanely simple. And if the response is, well, we can't do it at that, we can't do it for, for the 33% cost percentage. Great. Let's not do it then. Let's go off and find something else that we can do for that whole thing. So it's about discipline and having the malleability and flexibility to know that if it doesn't make sense, to just don't do it.
Have you seen that percentage change for different businesses that you've looked at, either to own or to invest in?
It's certainly specific industry to industry and company to company. That's what worked well in that particular business. But in the it was a much different model when it came to the fitness world, right? Because there again, it's high fixed cost, low marginal costs. But again, you can figure out what profit margin that you want to engineer for the business, and then you can work backwards to figure out what you should be charging and how you should think about doing that. The key with these small businesses is that, I mean, at the end of the day, I think people like to talk a lot about closing businesses and buying businesses and selling businesses, but the real important part is actually the thing in the middle of operations. And operations are just discipline and metrics. Discipline and metrics. I'm a fan at the current time of EOS, and it just talks about people and processes. People and processes. It's nothing more than figuring out what your important metrics are, and then just through heck or high water, having the discipline to follow through on them. So the outcome of the high profit margins, and it's an exercise of peeling back the onion, right? The outcome of the high profit margins for the industrial service business is because we were able to stick to the 67% gross profit margin, 33% cost percentage rule, right? Internally, we actually call it the 33% cost margin rule. And in order to get to that point, you have to peel back to what the next metric is. So, okay, so what other metrics might matter in this case? Is it going to be technician? Is it revenue per technician? Is it revenue per truck to hour or port to port? Is it truck utilization rate? What metrics matter, right? And you go through that process of figuring that out, which doesn't take a day, it doesn't take a week, it doesn't take a month. It takes sometimes years to figure out what metrics are really leading indicators for the business.
Yeah.
And then you work on those, you figure out what matters, what doesn't, and boom, that's how you work back from there. In that business, right, and again, going back to the idea of acquisition entrepreneurship, a lot of those processes, although they were archaic, were in place, right? And then again, the idea with buying something that exists is that you're going in and you're saying, hey, there's great systems here already. I potentially could improve them. I'm not really going to know that until I actually get in there and know more about what's going on. But the way you lower risk at its core is you're buying something that already works. And that's why acquisition entrepreneurship makes sense to me. And that's why franchising makes sense to me, because in both those situations, you're buying processes and you're buying something that already works. And all that you have to do, all that we have to do is go in there with our capital and with our entrepreneurial passion and energy just listen and effort and go all in, and can be wildly successful. I always joke in the world of franchising, more so in franchising, but to an extent with ETA as well, or buying existing businesses. It's great. Like myself, I've seen some of what I consider to be, and I put myself in this group, some of the dumbest people in the world making millions of dollars, right? I mean, you can't have like an MBA from Harvard. That's not going to hurt. It's only going to be additive and help, right? But you don't need that stuff, right? What you do need is an ability to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Find something that's already working, minimize risk, and just apply that. Just take something that's working, minimize risk, either open it in a new geography where it shares a lot of attributes to where the other ones have been successful, or buy a business that is already humping out cash, the processes are in place, and things are just set and good to go. Are these opportunities zero risk? Absolutely not. Is any business perfect? Nope. I think every business is essentially like you're fixing a plane, while it's flying, right? At
Well,
the risk of crashing every single day. That's what business operations and ownership are like. For
yeah.
me, for companies that that I invest in, that I serve on boards for, it's all the same. Things are just a quagmire 24/7. It's draining, it's stressful, it's hard to deal with. So no
Yeah.
business is perfect, right? But these businesses work and they
They're at
have
least flying.
processes. Yeah.
They're at least flying. Yeah, you're referencing. At least it sounds like you're referencing the. I think it was Reid Hoffman analogy of trying to build an empire, build an airplane as it's falling.
Oh,
And
that's cool. Another guy. Yeah. So there we go. I didn't
another
even know
Reid.
that. I didn't even know that was his
You
thing,
didn't know
but it's
that? Yeah,
absolutely
he did.
amazing. Yeah.
Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn and PayPal fame, describes entrepreneurship as building an airplane as you're plummeting through space. And carrying on that analogy, the reason ETA is lower risk, it's still like fixing an airplane mid-flight is risky, but it's less risky than building the airplane mid-flight.
I 100% agree with that. And that's the thing about like the people that you choose to, follow or resonate with. There's not a lot of difference in the messages, right? It's just a matter of, and it goes back to the idea of peer groups too. There's not a huge difference in the peer groups. It's just a matter of which one relates the most to you, right? Which one do you feel the most comfortable with? Because a lot of these lessons have just this wisdom of just passed the test of time. And again, what's the 10-year failure rate for startups? Do you know? What's your guess?
My guess would 10-year failure rate. My guess would be like 90%.
Yeah, not that high, right? 65%. But if you're going to be a startup, yeah, you got a 2/3 chance of failing.
Yeah.
If you want to lower that risk, right? You can lower that risk by making the startup a franchise, although franchises are included in that number, or buy something that exists that is already working. And then just be ready for once you get into it, it's going to be a quagmire. And what you're going to really spend your time doing is building, further refining and optimizing processes, and further refining and optimizing the people, right? Because taking the page out of EOS and Gino Wickman and everything, in my experience, business ownership and business operations are about people and about processes. And that goes for any industry, right? In Anytime Fitness, the metric that mattered was one thing. And when I look at M&A deals, or I do advice on M&A deals all the time in the fitness space, and the metric I look at, first thing I go through is I care about what the operations attrition rate is, right? Their attrition or their retention rate. And if you show me that number, I can pretty much then tell you what their EBITDA margins are. I can tell you a lot about the business just from that. So then from an operational standpoint, we look at, okay, what then actually drives attrition? And that's where that peel back of the onion thing comes in. And that's, we can talk about what some of those things have been historically. That's a lot about what business ownership and operations is about, is figuring those things out and figuring out ways to chip away, right, at those metrics that matter. Because when you chip away at those metrics that matter, it trickles down to the P&L, it trickles down to returns for investors, it trickles down all throughout the business. But as an operator, your job is just with your pickaxe or your, hammer or whatever it might be, you're just chipping away at those metrics, and going from there.
Now, you almost touched on literally my next question, which was something that surprised me when I read your book about one of the key things you identified that really determined attrition rate. I'm gonna quote a line from your book. So one of the top performing metrics was automatically deducting dues directly from a checking account and savings account versus a credit card.
And the best part is that it wasn't even my idea to do that. It was a billing company, right, that did the EFTs for us, and the credit card said, listen, if you want to save some money and B, have lower attrition, like do this, right? And then the crazy part is that with a lot of discipline, I did it. And then over the years could say, wow, when we were really able to achieve that, it trickled down to the attrition rate, right? And now what I will say is that, and it got to the point, by the way, that when people would sign up, using a credit card was not an option, and we just didn't allow it. Simple as that.
Wow, that's crazy.
Because you could see, you're like, wow, if we allow this, it's going to lead to this outcome. So those conversations are annoying. They're tough, and some customers would not sign up without doing that. Or, of course, the other option is pay the full membership in full, right? So you can always kind of price discriminate to optimize. But when you know what the cost of doing that is, then you're very tempted to be able to have those, to really hold firm and have those conversations. It's about running a business based on data-driven metrics. Now, it's interesting, though, how times have changed. because the biggest reason to do that is that credit card numbers change. And then back at that time, if a credit card number changed, the merchant could not keep on charging it, right? That is binarily not necessarily the case these days, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now it's more, and it's again, Amex, Visa, MasterCard, different policies, the situation's ever evolving. But that trend is not as important now as it was back then, because now if you lose a credit card number, but you've been charging that same account for 14 months, generally the credit card companies will let you keep on charging it.
Yeah.
Or if you get a new expiration date on a card, same thing. Back in the day, they would say, nope, you can't charge it anymore. Whereas now it's not quite the same. So potentially a different metric would matter. But the key takeaway is when you discover something like, you need to discover things like that in the trenches. And then again, just like with the 33% cost percentage rule, have the discipline to stick to them. And if you're buying a good business, it's already going to have a lot of these things with it, right? Which is great. But if you are not buying a good business or you're doing a startup, that's where, you have to figure these things out from scratch. Yeah. And that's where it can be more of a challenge. And the best outcome is you buy something where, hey, there's some metrics here, but you can obviously do more to kind of improve them, understand what other ones are. And again, just like with the brothers taxi business, right? Take something that works and then, completely expand it from there. I guess if I didn't have a third brother, but if we did, then he could have gotten into like smart scheduling and routing and price optimization. Could have started to say, cool, I want to start, I got like these people on he could have just, seriously, a third person could have just flyered the people on our block and said, hey, free taxi service, right? And that way, perfect operations. You wouldn't have to like drive, 20 miles or 2 miles away to pick somebody up. I could have actually like started to do routing. So you kind of see how, again, you can just improve upon something that already works.
How are you doing on time? We're like 2 minutes from time, and I've got a couple more questions, but we can cut it if you need to go right away.
No, I'm good. I'm actually going to go work out, but I don't have to leave for like probably 15 minutes. So yeah, 5 more minutes is good.
Can you tell me a little bit about your double diamond framework? Something you talk about a lot in the book, and I know you have some tools online. Can you share that with the audience?
Yeah, go to grititdone.com and feel free to download it. You can also buy the book on Amazon if you want to. The key to the framework is that's one that has worked successfully for me. You look at various metrics in the business such as customers, suppliers, competition, et cetera, and you run them through a rating system. So that's what works for me. I'm obviously very biased to it, but the key takeaway is have a framework that you use and don't keep the framework to yourself. You need to share it with other people, just like the lonely business owners. To our point earlier, can tell themselves whatever stories they want to about their business. You can do the same thing, but you need to bounce what you're thinking off other people and give them the information, have them run the opportunity through the framework as well and see what they say. One of my fellow professors at BYU, I love him. He's great. He says, you always want to get as much advice as you possibly can and then ignore it, right? Then choose to ignore it and do your thing anyway, right? And I'm totally on board. If you feel strongly about something, just go out there, grit it done, and then come back on a podcast or teach a course about what you did and create your own framework, right? And that's entrepreneurial mentality, what makes America great. Like go do it. Huge fan of that. But I do think though that that you're walking through a minefield, right? And if you share things with people and get their perspective on it, they're just going to show you where one more of those landmines are, right? And that's one landmine that you can avoid. So now as opposed to stepping on 7 landmines, you're only going to step on 6. And that's great.
That's great.
And it'll allow you to create a more viable post-close roadmap than you otherwise would have been able to. So run it by other people, get their thoughts, encourage them to question you, to tell you the reasons that you're wrong, to look at it from a different perspective. And then you can either choose to, if they point out things that are deal killers, and then you move on to the next one. But if you do it anyways, or if you push it forward, then at least you have other opinions about it. And that can be very, very valuable.
I love that, Reid. Describe to me what your day-to-day looks like now. Do you have a typical day? You're an extremely busy gentleman.
Yeah, I always start the morning doing exactly what I don't want to do, precisely when I don't want to do it, which these days actually most relates to finishing up a proposal for a PhD paper that I'm doing. So awesome. I get out and I crank that out for 90 minutes because I just really do not, and it's cool paper, like stuff that's really fascinating to me, such as business seller satisfaction, such as how buyers and sellers send signals to each other during the process about what matters post-transaction, helping people close. Really, really cool research, but very hard to do, and I do not like doing it. So I do that thing first, and then I'm training for some mountaineering now. So you can wait till after I leave to post this, but I'm set up to go make a summit attempt on Everest on April 25th. So I've been doing a lot of training for that. But the fun part is that, and I can't say I'm in the best shape of my life. I might have been in better shape when I was doing Ironman training, but I'm definitely in the best mountaineering shape, and I might be in the best shape. It's hard to know.
How do you measure that?
Yeah. How do you measure that? Right. It's it's just like, oh, I just went on like a 6-hour hike, breaking trail in the Wasatch and 2 foot deep, or not 2 foot, but 3-4 feet deep snow, and I'm not that tired. Right. It's like it's like kind of how you measure it. Right.
Yeah.
But so a lot of training for that. And then I'm teaching at a couple places. But the key is that I just do exactly what I don't want to do, precisely when I don't want to do it, first thing in the morning, so I get it done. And that's I think that's the critical part to, for me at least over the years. And again, just what works for me. That's how I'm able to get things done.
I love that.
Makes everything else in the day seem so much easier.
Can you share with us the courses that you're teaching? So you already mentioned Case Western, you mentioned BYU, I think you mentioned Booth as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about the courses, the different levels, and if people want to take your course, like where would they have to enroll?
Yeah, right. It's interesting. So 2 points on that. I teach undergrads at BYU. I teach MBAs at Case Western, and I teach executives as well. So I kind of teach every avatar in education how to do it. If you don't want to and some of those classes you can register for through the executive programs. You don't have to be a student. But what I do tell people, though, is that there's a lot of great ETA incubators and accelerators out there to go with. I am biased towards and I have, at the current time, no economic interest or any kind of like upside in it. But I'm biased to a certain one of them because I think it has the highest success rate. So if anyone wants to know which one that is, just have them reach out to me on LinkedIn. And the best way to follow me or engage in me is on LinkedIn. Just find me there. I can happily kind of go deeper on that. So in the same way that business operators and owners should be part of a peer group, people that are looking to buy a business should absolutely be part of a peer group as well. Because again, misery loves company, and there's no reason to go through the process of trying to search for a business, right, on your own.
Yeah. Are you currently searching or funding searchers?
Yeah, I definitely fund searchers from time to time. I'm not a big investor. I tell people that, and I have a lot of personal reasons for believing that. I just tell people that, hey, you should search when you have enough money to own 100% of the equity, right? Yeah. Because you can bring on, equity is very valuable. And, I think the best outcome is have all of it for yourself. But even if not all for yourself, you want to be able to give it to people that can add value to the business going forward, right? Like a COO that you want to give like 5% to, or, maybe you want to bring someone like me on for a board seat. And I'm like, I'm only going to do it if you pay me $10,000 a year and you give me like 1% equity, right? So equity is very valuable, and it is very valuable as time goes on as well. So my guidance is do it when you have enough money that you do not need to take outside investors on to begin with. With that said, usually for students that I teach, or people I've had long-standing relationships with, I will generally back them without asking that many questions. Actually, I'm very quick to write a check of $50 to $100K to empower, another EBO in America, right? It's good for the country. So I do invest, and I serve on some boards as part of that as well, which is nice. Although I'm being on a board where the owner doesn't control the company is an interesting dynamic to be in. But more on that later. And I don't actively deal source, but what happens is that deals, some of which make sense for me, like come my way just by virtue of being, out there in the space. And a key takeaway for prospective ETA practitioners is that it's so much easier. It's never easy to source for businesses. It's a lot easier though when you already own a business of any kind, right? It's much easier once you're in there. So I think that from a career guidance and a, advice coaching standpoint, figure out a way to get in the game, no matter what that is. And then once you've crossed that line, you're sending signals to people that you are serious about doing this. And then you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of being a business owner, which I think can be a good life.
Awesome. So Reid, what's your ultimate goal?
What's my ultimate goal?
Yeah.
Longer term, ultimate goal right now is just simply to be the best teacher of entrepreneurship through acquisition in the history of the world, right? That's what I go for at BYU. It's what I go for at the places that I teach. I just believe in the idea of good, better, best. Never ever rest until good is better and better is best. So anytime that I teach, whether I'm a guest lecturer or the full professor, doesn't matter. I always ask people for feedback on how I did, and then I just apply it the next time, and just like with the metrics in the businesses, right? Just slowly chip away, find what people resonate with, find what works, find what doesn't work, and just move on to perfection.
Wonderful. Reid, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Much appreciated. Thank you for having me on.